Welcome to Woo English, where we teach English through fascinating stories from history. In today's video, we'll dive into the life of Adam Smith, the father of modern economics. You'll discover his journey from a curious boy in Scotland to the author of The Wealth of Nations, a book that changed the way we think about economics. We'll explore his groundbreaking ideas about free markets, competition, and the invisible hand, ideas that continue to shape our world today. Our goal is to help you improve your English while enjoying these inspiring stories. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to share it, like it, leave a comment, and subscribe for more engaging content. Let's get started. Chapter 1. A Curious Boy. In the small, quiet town of Kirkcaldy, Scotland, a boy named Adam Smith was born in 1723. Kirkcaldy was a simple place, full of fishermen, farmers, and families living ordinary lives. But from the very beginning, Adam was anything but ordinary. He was a curious boy, always asking questions, always wanting to know more. Adam was not like the other children. While they played outside, running through the fields and climbing trees, Adam could often be found in a different world. The world of books. He loved to read, and he read everything he could get his hands on. History, philosophy, science, nothing was too difficult or boring for young Adam. The more he read, the more questions he had. Why do people trade? What makes countries rich or poor? How do governments affect our lives? These were big questions, questions that even the adults around him couldn't always answer. But that didn't stop Adam. His mind was like a sponge, soaking up every bit of knowledge he could find. And his mother, Margaret, saw how special her son was. She was a strong woman, and she knew that Adam needed a good education. She wanted him to have the best opportunities, to learn, to grow, and to think deeply about the world. Margaret made sure Adam went to the best schools. She encouraged him to study hard, to explore his ideas, and to never stop asking questions. She believed in him, and Adam knew it. With her support, he felt like he could achieve anything. One of Adam's favorite places in Kirkcaldy was the local bookshop. It was a small shop, but to Adam, it was a treasure trove of knowledge. He would spend hours there, lost in the pages of books. The shopkeeper knew Adam well and would often recommend books he thought Adam might like. History books that told stories of ancient civilizations, philosophy books that asked deep questions about life. Adam devoured them all. As he read, Adam's mind was filled with ideas that were different from what most people believed at the time. He began to see the world in a new way, questioning old beliefs and thinking about how things could be different. These ideas were still forming, like pieces of a puzzle slowly coming together. But one day, they would change the world. But Adam wasn't just curious about books. He was curious about people, too. He loved to observe how people lived, how they worked, and how they traded goods. Kirkcaldy was a busy town, with ships coming and going from the harbor, carrying goods like coal, salt, and linen. Adam would watch the merchants as they traded, wondering what made some of them successful while others struggled. What were the rules of trade? Why did people exchange goods? These questions fascinated him, and they would stay with him for the rest of his life. As he grew older, Adam's curiosity only deepened. He wanted to understand not just the world around him, but also the forces that shaped it. Why were some countries rich while others were poor? What made economies grow? How did governments affect the lives of ordinary people? These were big questions, questions that would eventually lead Adam to become one of the greatest thinkers of all time. But for now, Adam was still a boy with a thirst for knowledge and a mind full of ideas. He didn't know it yet, but his ideas would one day change the way people thought about economics, trade, and society. He would challenge old beliefs and offer new ways of understanding the world. In the years to come, Adam would travel far from Kirkcaldy. He would study at the best universities, meet other great thinkers, and write books that would inspire generations. But no matter where his journey took him, he would always remember his roots, his quiet hometown, the love and support of his mother, and the endless hours spent in that little bookshop, dreaming of a world full of possibilities. And so, the story of Adam Smith begins, with a curious boy in a small Scottish town, a boy who loved to read, who asked big questions, and who was destined to change the world. Chapter 2. The Journey to University. At the age of 14, Adam Smith left his home in Kirkcaldy to attend the University of Glasgow. Can you imagine? A boy so young yet so determined to learn. It was an exciting time for Adam, but also a bit frightening. Leaving behind the familiar sights and sounds of his small town, Adam ventured into a new world, a world full of ideas, knowledge, and opportunities. The University of Glasgow was a place where great minds came together. It was one of the best universities in Scotland, and students from all over the country came to study there. Adam quickly realized that this was where he belonged. The university was buzzing with intellectual energy, and Adam's mind was like a sponge, ready to absorb everything it could. Adam studied many subjects at Glasgow, but he was particularly drawn to the teachings of logic, ethics, and economics. These were new and exciting areas of study, and they opened up a whole new way of thinking for him. The professors at Glasgow were some of the best in the country, and they encouraged Adam to explore his ideas, to question everything, and to think deeply about the world around him. One of Adam's favorite teachers was Francis Hutcheson, a professor of moral philosophy. Hutcheson was passionate about his subject, and his enthusiasm was contagious. He believed that people could live happy and good lives by following the principles of justice and fairness. He taught that every human being had the capacity for kindness, and that we should treat others as we would want to be treated. These lessons made a deep impression on Adam. He was fascinated by the idea that moral principles could guide human behavior, and that justice and fairness were the foundations of a good society. Hutcheson's teachings would stay with Adam for the rest of his life, influencing his thinking and shaping his ideas about economics and society. But Glasgow wasn't just about lectures and books. The university was a place where students could engage in lively debates and discussions. Adam spent many evenings talking with his fellow students, sharing ideas, and debating the issues of the day. These discussions were intense and sometimes heated, but they were also incredibly stimulating. They helped Adam to refine his ideas, to think more clearly, and to develop his own unique perspective on the world. During his time at Glasgow, Adam also began to develop a strong interest in economics. He was curious about how economies worked, what made them grow, why some countries were rich while others were poor, and how trade and commerce affected people's lives. These questions fascinated him, and he began to see that economics was not just about money, but about people, society, and the way we live our lives. Adam realized that economics was a powerful tool for understanding the world. It could explain why some countries prospered while others struggled, why some people lived in luxury while others lived in poverty. He began to see that economics was not just a dry and technical subject, but a field that could help to improve the lives of millions of people. After completing his studies at Glasgow, Adam went on to study at Balliol College, Oxford. Oxford was a prestigious university known for its rich history and tradition. But when Adam arrived, he found that the teaching there was very different from what he had experienced at Glasgow. The professors at Oxford were more conservative, and they were not as open to new ideas. They preferred to stick to the old ways of thinking, and they discouraged students from questioning established beliefs. For Adam, this was frustrating. He was eager to explore new ideas, to challenge old assumptions, and to think creatively about the world. But at Oxford, he found himself constrained by the rigid academic environment. The lectures were dry, the books were outdated, and the professors seemed uninterested in the fresh perspectives that Adam wanted to explore. Despite these challenges, Adam didn't give up. He spent most of his time in the library, reading books on his own and studying subjects that interested him. He read works on history, philosophy, and economics, and he began to develop his own ideas about how society and the economy worked. He realized that the traditional ways of thinking about these subjects were not enough, that there was a need for new ideas, new approaches, and new ways of understanding the world. One of the most important lessons that Adam learned during his time at university was the importance of thinking for oneself. He realized that it was not enough to simply accept what others had taught him, that he needed to question, to explore, and to discover the truth for himself. This realization would become a central theme in his later work, as he sought to challenge the conventional wisdom of his time and to offer new insights into the workings of the economy. After completing his studies at Oxford, Adam returned to Scotland, where he began giving lectures. He quickly became known as a brilliant thinker and a powerful speaker. His lectures covered a wide range of topics, from philosophy and ethics to economics and politics. People traveled from far and wide to hear him speak, and his ideas began to attract attention from some of the most important thinkers of his time. During this period, Adam met another great philosopher, David Hume. Hume was one of the leading intellectuals of the Scottish Enlightenment, and he and Adam quickly became close friends. They spent countless hours discussing ideas, walking through the streets of Edinburgh, and debating the issues of the day. Hume's influence on Adam was profound. He encouraged Adam to think critically, to challenge conventional wisdom, and to develop his own ideas. Their friendship was one of mutual respect and admiration, and it helped to shape Adam's thinking in important ways. It was during this time that Adam began to develop the ideas that would later become the foundation of his most famous work, The Wealth of Nations. He started to see that economics was not just about money and trade, but about the way people lived their lives. He realized that the economy was a complex system, influenced by many factors, including human behavior, government policies, and social institutions. Adam's time at university had given him the tools he needed to explore these ideas in depth. He had learned to think critically, to question assumptions, and to develop his own unique perspective on the world. Now, he was ready to take those ideas and turn them into something truly remarkable, a work that would change the way people thought about economics and society forever. And so, the journey that began with a curious boy in a small Scottish town was now leading Adam Smith towards his destiny. He had the knowledge, the passion, and the determination to make a difference in the world. And he was just getting started. Chapter 3. The World of Ideas. After his enriching experience at the University of Glasgow, where he had been exposed to new ideas and inspiring teachers, Adam Smith took the next step on his academic journey, to Oxford University. Oxford was one of the most prestigious universities in the world, known for its long history and its tradition of producing great thinkers. Adam was excited. He thought he would continue to explore new ideas and meet brilliant minds just as he had at Glasgow. But when Adam arrived at Oxford, he was surprised and disappointed. The teaching methods there were very different from what he had experienced before. The professors were strict, and the lectures were often dry and uninspiring. They focused on the old ways of thinking, clinging to ideas that had been accepted for centuries without question. Innovation and fresh perspectives were not encouraged. Instead, students were expected to memorize and repeat what they were taught, rather than think for themselves. For someone like Adam, who had a mind full of curiosity and a desire to explore new ideas, this was frustrating. He wanted to ask questions. He wanted to challenge the status quo. But at Oxford, it seemed like there was little room for the kind of intellectual freedom that Adam craved. However, Adam was not the type to give up easily. He decided to take matters into his own hands. Instead of relying solely on the lectures, Adam spent countless hours in the university library, a place where he could lose himself in the world of books. The library at Oxford was vast, filled with books from all over the world, covering every subject imaginable. Adam read voraciously, immersing himself in works of history, economics, and philosophy. As he read, Adam began to form his own ideas that were different from what the professors were teaching. He started to see patterns in history, noticing how societies rose and fell, often because of economic factors. He began to think deeply about the nature of trade, the role of government, and how economies functioned. These thoughts were the seeds of something much bigger, something that would eventually grow into his revolutionary theories on economics. One of the most important lessons Adam learned during this time was the value of independent thinking. He realized that true understanding didn't come from simply accepting what others said, but from questioning, exploring, and discovering for oneself. This was a turning point in Adam's intellectual journey. He began to trust his own judgment, to believe that he could contribute something new to the world of ideas. Despite the challenges he faced at Oxford, Adam continued to develop his thoughts. He started to think about how wealth was created and how it could be measured. He pondered the reasons why some nations became prosperous while others remained poor. He was particularly interested in the idea of the division of labor, the way that tasks in society are divided among different people, each specializing in their own work. He saw how this could make production more efficient and how it could lead to greater wealth for a nation. Adam also began to think about the role of markets. He observed that when people were free to trade with one another, without too much interference from the government, they were often able to find the best ways to meet each other's needs. This was because people, acting in their own self-interest, would naturally seek out the best deals and the most efficient ways to produce goods. Adam was starting to see that this invisible hand of the market could guide economic activity in a way that benefited everyone, even if no one was consciously trying to help others. These ideas were just beginning to take shape in Adam's mind, but they were already powerful. They challenged the traditional views of how economies worked and suggested that there was a better way to understand wealth, trade, and society. Adam knew that he was onto something important, but he also knew that he needed more time and more experiences to fully develop these ideas. After completing his studies at Oxford, Adam returned to Scotland. He began giving lectures and sharing his thoughts with others. His lectures quickly became popular, attracting people who were eager to hear his fresh perspectives on philosophy, economics, and politics. Adam was not just a thinker, he was also a gifted communicator. He had a way of explaining complex ideas in a way that was clear and engaging, making them accessible to everyone. But Adam's journey was far from over. His next great adventure would take him beyond the borders of Scotland into the heart of Europe. In 1763, Adam received an invitation that would change his life. Charles Townshend, a powerful British politician, asked Adam to become the tutor for his stepson, the young Duke of Buccleuch. This was an incredible opportunity. Adam would travel across Europe, meeting some of the most influential thinkers of the time. And so, Adam set off on a grand adventure. He visited France, Switzerland, and Italy. Everywhere he went, he met philosophers, economists, and politicians. He discussed ideas about trade, politics, and society. These experiences broadened his horizons and gave him new insights into how the world worked. In France, he met the physiocrats, a group of economists who believed that the wealth of nations was derived primarily from agriculture. Although Adam didn't agree with all of their ideas, these discussions helped him refine his own thoughts on economics. One of the most important things Adam learned during his travels was the importance of free trade. He saw how restrictions on trade, such as tariffs and quotas, could harm economies by limiting the exchange of goods and services. He began to believe that economies worked best when people were free to trade with one another, without unnecessary interference from the government. This idea of free markets would become a cornerstone of Adam's economic theories. Adam's travels also gave him a deeper understanding of the relationship between government and the economy. He saw how different governments in Europe controlled economic activity, often to the detriment of their citizens. He began to develop the idea that while governments had a role to play in the economy, such as protecting property rights and maintaining order, they should not try to control every aspect of economic life. Instead, they should allow markets to operate freely, guided by the invisible hand. These experiences were crucial in shaping Adam's thinking. They helped him to see the bigger picture, to understand the complex forces that drive economies and societies. When Adam finally returned to Scotland, he was ready to put all of these ideas together into something extraordinary. Adam settled in Kirkcaldy, his hometown, and began the most important work of his life, writing The Wealth of Nations. This book would take years to complete, but it would change the world. In The Wealth of Nations, Adam would lay out his vision of how economies work, how wealth is created, and how societies can prosper through free markets and the division of labor. As Adam sat down to write, he knew that his ideas were powerful. He knew that they had the potential to change the way people thought about economics forever. And so, with pen in hand and a mind full of ideas, Adam Smith began the work that would make him one of the most influential thinkers in history. The world of ideas had taken root in Adam's mind, and now it was time to share those ideas with the world. Chapter 4: A New Path. After his time at Oxford, Adam Smith returned to Scotland, but he was not the same young man who had left Kirkcaldy years before. He had grown, learned, and developed new ideas that were now buzzing in his mind. Scotland welcomed him back, and soon Adam began a new chapter of his life. He became a lecturer, sharing his knowledge and insights with eager students and curious minds. Adam's lectures were something special. He spoke about philosophy, ethics, and, most intriguingly, economics. His voice was soft and gentle, yet it carried the weight of his powerful ideas. People came from all over to hear him speak, filling the lecture halls with excitement. They knew they were listening to someone extraordinary, someone who could change the way they thought about the world. One of the remarkable things about Adam's lectures was how he made complicated ideas easy to understand. He spoke of abstract concepts like the invisible hand and the division of labor, but he did so in a way that anyone could grasp. He used simple examples, often drawing from everyday life. His students loved his clear explanations and the way he connected big ideas to the real world. But Adam wasn't just teaching, he was also learning. During this time, he met a man who would become one of his closest friends and greatest influences, David Hume. Hume was a philosopher, a giant of the Scottish Enlightenment, and he shared Adam's passion for knowledge and understanding. The two men quickly became inseparable. Adam and David would spend hours together, walking through the streets of Edinburgh, discussing everything from ethics to politics to economics. These conversations were more than just friendly chats. They were intense intellectual exchanges that helped Adam refine his own ideas. David Hume's sharp mind and deep insights challenged Adam to think more deeply, to question his assumptions, and to push his ideas even further. One of the key topics they discussed was the nature of human behavior. Hume believed that people were guided by their passions and that our decisions were often based on feelings rather than pure logic. Adam agreed, but he also believed that there was something more, a sense of sympathy or empathy that connected people to one another. This idea would later become a central theme in Adam's first major work, The Theory of Moral Sentiments. In The Theory of Moral Sentiments, published in 1759, Adam explored how people make moral decisions. He argued that humans are naturally inclined to care about others, and that our moral judgments come from our ability to understand and share the feelings of those around us. This idea of sympathy was groundbreaking. It challenged the notion that people were purely selfish and suggested that our social connections were a fundamental part of what made us human. The book was a success, bringing Adam widespread recognition. People across Europe praised his insights into human nature and morality. But even as he enjoyed this success, Adam knew that his work was far from over. There was another idea growing in his mind, an idea about how economies worked, how wealth was created, and how society could be organized in a way that benefited everyone. This new idea would take Adam on a journey beyond Scotland, beyond the boundaries of what was known, and into the heart of Europe. In 1763, Adam received an invitation that would change his life. Charles Townshend, a powerful British politician, asked Adam to become the tutor for his stepson, the young Duke of Buccleuch. It was an opportunity that Adam couldn't refuse. And so, Adam was off on a grand adventure. He visited France, Switzerland, and Italy. Everywhere he went, he met philosophers, economists, and politicians. They discussed ideas about trade, politics, and society. These experiences broadened Adam's horizons and gave him new insights into how the world worked. In France, Adam met the physiocrats, a group of economists who believed that all wealth came from the land, particularly from agriculture. They argued that the government should allow free trade and that economic policy should focus on maximizing agricultural production. While Adam found some of their ideas interesting, he didn't agree with everything they said. He began to think more critically about the sources of wealth and the role of markets in creating prosperity. As Adam traveled through Europe, he saw firsthand how different economic systems worked. He observed the effects of government control over the economy, such as tariffs and regulations that restricted trade. He also saw the benefits of free markets, where competition drove innovation and efficiency. These observations helped him develop his own ideas about the economy, ideas that would later form the basis of his most famous work, The Wealth of Nations. But it wasn't just economic theories that Adam was developing during his travels. He was also thinking about the role of government in society. He believed that while the government had an important role to play, such as protecting property rights, enforcing contracts, and maintaining order, it should not interfere too much in the workings of the economy. Instead, Adam argued that individuals acting in their own self-interest would naturally find the most efficient ways to produce and trade goods. This idea, known as the invisible hand, became one of the most famous concepts in economic theory. After several years of travel, Adam returned to Scotland in 1766, ready to put all of his ideas together. He settled back in Kirkcaldy, his hometown, and began the monumental task of writing The Wealth of Nations. It was a work that would take him nearly a decade to complete, but he was determined. Adam knew that his ideas could change the way people thought about economics, and he wanted to make sure they were presented clearly and convincingly. Adam's friendship with David Hume continued to be a source of inspiration during this time. They corresponded regularly, discussing the progress of Adam's book and sharing thoughts on philosophy and economics. Hume's encouragement helped keep Adam motivated, even when the work was challenging. Finally, in 1776, The Wealth of Nations was published. The book was an instant success. It was unlike anything that had been written before, a comprehensive analysis of how economies worked, how wealth was created, and how societies could prosper through the principles of free markets and the division of labor. Adam's ideas were revolutionary. They challenged the traditional views of economics and offered a new way of understanding the world. The Wealth of Nations had a profound impact on the world. It influenced policymakers, economists, and thinkers for generations to come. It laid the foundation for modern economic theory and helped shape the development of capitalism. Adam Smith's ideas about free markets, competition, and the role of government continue to be relevant today, more than 200 years after the book was first published. Adam Smith's journey, from a curious boy in Kirkcaldy to a world-renowned economist, was one of passion, curiosity, and relentless pursuit of knowledge. His friendship with David Hume, his travels through Europe, and his deep commitment to understanding the world all contributed to his groundbreaking work. And in the end, his ideas changed the world forever. As Adam reflected on his life's work, he knew that his journey had been worth it. He had followed a new path, and in doing so, He had left a lasting legacy that would continue to inspire and guide generations to come. Remember, you're listening to Woo English, where we make learning English both fun and educational with stories that matter. If you're enjoying the journey through Adam Smith's life, don't forget to share, like, and leave a comment below. Your feedback helps us create even more engaging content. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe for more stories like this one. Now, let's dive into Chapter 5. Chapter 5. The Theory of Moral Sentiments. In 1759, after years of deep thinking and careful observation, Adam Smith published his first major work, The Theory of Moral Sentiments. This book was a remarkable achievement, and it was the beginning of Adam's journey to becoming one of the most influential thinkers of his time. The Theory of Moral Sentiments was not just another book, it was a new way of thinking about how people relate to each other. Adam believed that humans are naturally good, that deep down, we care about others and want to do the right thing. He argued that our moral decisions come from a sense of sympathy, which, in his time, meant something a bit different from what we might think today. To Adam, sympathy was the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and feel what they feel. Imagine this. When we see someone in pain, we feel a sense of sadness for them. When we see someone happy, we feel a little happier ourselves. This, Adam argued, is the root of our moral behavior. We make decisions not just based on our own needs, but also on how we think our actions will affect others. It's this shared understanding, this ability to feel what others feel, that helps guide us in making choices that are fair and just. Adam's ideas were revolutionary. At a time when many people believed that humans were driven only by self-interest, Adam suggested that there was something deeper at play. He believed that our natural sympathy for others is what holds society together. It's what helps us create rules, laws, and customs that promote fairness and justice. The theory of moral sentiments was well received, and it quickly made Adam famous. Scholars and thinkers across Europe admired his work, praising his insights into human nature. Adam's ideas challenged the conventional wisdom of the time and opened up new ways of thinking about ethics and society. But Adam wasn't content to stop there. He knew that his work on moral philosophy was just one part of a much larger picture. While the theory of moral sentiments explained how people make moral decisions, Adam was also deeply interested in understanding how people make economic decisions, how they produce, buy, sell, and trade goods. He realized that these two areas, morality and economics, were closely connected, and he was determined to explore this relationship further. During this period, Adam continued to teach and give lectures, sharing his ideas with students and fellow scholars. His lectures were popular, attracting people from all walks of life who were eager to hear his thoughts on philosophy, economics, and human behavior. Adam had a gentle voice, but his ideas were powerful. People left his lectures inspired, thinking about the world in new ways. One of the most important relationships in Adam's life during this time was his friendship with David Hume. Hume was a well-known philosopher, and he and Adam became close friends. They would spend hours walking through the streets of Edinburgh, discussing ideas and debating the big questions of the day. Hume was a skeptic, someone who questioned everything, and he encouraged Adam to think critically and to challenge established beliefs. Their conversations were not just intellectually stimulating, they were also deeply personal. Hume and Adam supported each other, offering encouragement and advice as they each pursued their own work. Hume's influence on Adam was profound, helping him refine his ideas and giving him the confidence to push the boundaries of traditional thinking. As Adam continued to develop his ideas, he began to see how his work on moral philosophy could be connected to his growing interest in economics. He started to think about how the same principles that guide our moral decisions might also influence our economic choices. Just as sympathy helps us make fair and just decisions in our personal lives, Adam wondered if there might be an invisible force guiding the economy, helping it to work efficiently and fairly even when people were acting in their own self-interest. This line of thinking led Adam to start work on his next great project, a project that would take years to complete but would become his most famous and influential work. He began to think deeply about the nature of wealth, how it was created, and how it was distributed across society. He wondered what made some nations rich while others remained poor, and why some markets thrived while others failed. Adam started to see that economics was not just about money, it was about people. It was about how we interact with each other, how we exchange goods and services, and how we build the systems that allow our societies to function. He realized that the same principles of fairness, justice, and sympathy that he had written about in the theory of moral sentiments could also be applied to understanding the economy. As Adam worked on these ideas, he continued to travel and meet with other scholars, philosophers, and economists. His travels took him to France, where he met with the physiocrats, a group of economists who believed that the wealth of nations was based on agriculture. Although Adam didn't agree with all of their ideas, these discussions helped him refine his own thoughts and gave him new perspectives on the relationship between government and the economy. In these years, Adam's ideas began to take shape. He started to see the economy as a complex system where individuals, acting in their own self-interest, could unintentionally contribute to the overall good of society. He imagined an invisible hand guiding the economy, ensuring that even when people were focused on their own needs, their actions could lead to positive outcomes for everyone. But Adam knew that these ideas were still incomplete. He needed more time to develop them fully, to think through the implications, and to gather the evidence that would support his theories. He knew that what he was working on could change the way people thought about economics and society. But he also knew that he needed to be patient, to let the ideas mature before sharing them with the world. And so, Adam continued to write, to think, and to discuss his ideas with his friends and colleagues. He was not just a thinker, he was a builder, constructing a new way of understanding the world. He was laying the foundation for a work that would become one of the most important books in history, a book that would change the course of economics forever. As Adam worked late into the night, pen in hand, he could feel the significance of what he was doing. He was not just writing a book, he was shaping the future, offering a new vision of how economies could work, how wealth could be created, and how societies could prosper. The theory of moral sentiments had made Adam famous, but his greatest achievement was still to come. The ideas he was developing would soon be published in a book that would become known as The Wealth of Nations, a book that would change the world. Chapter 6. The Invitation. Adam Smith's life was about to take an exciting turn. One day, out of the blue, he received a surprising invitation. Charles Townshend, a powerful British politician and a man of great influence, had an unusual request. He wanted Adam to become the tutor of his stepson, the young Duke of Buccleuch. This was no ordinary job. It was a rare opportunity that would take Adam far beyond the borders of Scotland, across the vast and varied landscapes of Europe. For a thinker like Adam, the chance to travel, to meet new people, and to experience different cultures was thrilling. He knew that this journey would not only broaden his own horizons, but also give him new ideas to explore. It was an adventure he simply couldn't refuse. And so, with excitement in his heart, Adam accepted the offer. Soon, he was off on a grand adventure. His journey took him to France, Switzerland, and Italy, countries rich in history, culture, and intellectual life. Everywhere he went, Adam met with some of the most brilliant minds of the time, philosophers, economists, and politicians who were shaping the future of Europe. France was the first stop on Adam's journey. In Paris, the capital of art, science, and philosophy, Adam was introduced to a group of economists known as the physiocrats. These thinkers believed that the wealth of a nation was derived from agriculture, and they argued that government policy should focus on supporting farming and land use. The physiocrats had developed a theory that they called laissez-faire, which means let do or let it be. They believed that economies worked best when governments interfered as little as possible, when markets were free to operate on their own. Adam found these ideas fascinating, though he didn't agree with everything the physiocrats said. He respected their belief in free markets, but thought that their focus on agriculture was too narrow. Adam's own ideas were broader. He was interested in how all parts of the economy worked together, not just farming. But the discussions he had with the physiocrats were invaluable. They helped him refine his thoughts about the role of government in the economy and strengthened his belief in the importance of free trade. While in France, Adam also had the chance to observe the country's economy firsthand. He saw how government regulations and taxes could stifle business and prevent markets from working efficiently. He noticed that in many cases, these regulations did more harm than good. This only reinforced his growing belief that economies flourished when they were free from unnecessary government control. Next, Adam traveled to Switzerland, a country famous for its beautiful landscapes and its tradition of political freedom. In Switzerland, Adam met with scholars and political thinkers who were deeply concerned with issues of liberty and governance. They talked about how societies could be organized in a way that protected individual freedoms while promoting the common good. These conversations were inspiring to Adam, who was already thinking about how economic systems could be designed to benefit everyone. Finally, Adam arrived in Italy, a land rich in history and culture. In Italy, Adam visited cities like Milan, Venice, and Rome, each with its own unique economic and political systems. He saw how trade and commerce had made these cities prosperous, and he studied the different ways that governments managed their economies. In Venice, for example, Adam observed the role of merchant guilds and how they controlled trade. This gave him insights into how economic monopolies could limit competition and hurt consumers. Throughout his travels, Adam was constantly learning, observing, and thinking. He filled his notebooks with ideas, questions, and observations. He saw the world as a vast interconnected system where people, goods, and ideas moved freely across borders. He began to see how important it was for economies to be open and flexible, how free trade could create wealth, and how competition could lead to better products and services. But Adam's journey wasn't just about economics. It was also about culture, politics, and society. He met artists, writers, and scientists who were pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. He saw how different societies organized themselves, how they governed their people, and how they dealt with challenges like poverty and inequality. All of these experiences deepened Adam's understanding of the world and helped him develop a more comprehensive view of economics. As Adam traveled through Europe, he also reflected on his own country, Scotland. He thought about how the ideas he was encountering abroad could be applied back home. He began to see that Scotland, like many other countries, could benefit from more open markets, less government interference, and greater emphasis on competition and innovation. One of the most significant realizations Adam had during his travels was the importance of the division of labor. He noticed that in the most prosperous cities, tasks were divided among many different people, each specializing in their own work. This specialization allowed workers to become more skilled and efficient, which led to greater productivity and ultimately more wealth. Adam began to see the division of labor as a key factor in economic growth, an idea that would later become one of the central themes in his most famous work, The Wealth of Nations. But Adam's journey wasn't just about gathering ideas, it was also about sharing them. Everywhere he went, Adam engaged in lively discussions with the people he met. He challenged their ideas, and in turn, they challenged his. These exchanges were crucial in helping Adam refine his own thoughts and develop the theories that would later change the world. After several years of travel, Adam returned to Scotland, his mind brimming with new ideas and insights. He had seen firsthand how different economies operated, and he had talked with some of the most brilliant thinkers of his time. He knew that he was ready to take all of these experiences and turn them into something truly remarkable. Back in Scotland, Adam settled into a quiet life of study and writing. He began to work on what would become his magnum opus, The Wealth of Nations. This book would take everything he had learned during his travels and present it in a way that was clear, logical, and compelling. Adam knew that his ideas had the potential to change the way people thought about economics, and he was determined to make sure that his book would be as influential as possible. As Adam sat down to write, he reflected on his journey, the people he had met, the ideas he had encountered, and the lessons he had learned. He knew that his book would be more than just a collection of theories. It would be a blueprint for how economies could work better, how wealth could be created, and how societies could prosper. And so, with a deep sense of purpose, Adam Smith began to write. The ideas that had been brewing in his mind for years were finally taking shape on the page. He knew that this book would be his greatest achievement, and he was ready to share his vision of a better world with the rest of humanity. The Wealth of Nations would go on to become one of the most important books in history, laying the foundation for modern economics and changing the way people thought about trade, markets, and society. But it all began with a journey that took Adam Smith across Europe, into the hearts and minds of its greatest thinkers, and ultimately back home to Scotland, where he would create a work that would change the world forever. Chapter 7: The Wealth of Nations begins. As Adam Smith traveled through the bustling cities and serene countryside of France, something remarkable began to take shape in his mind. A book, unlike any he had written before. This book would not only capture his ideas, it would change the way the world understood economies, trade, and wealth. This book would be The Wealth of Nations. Adam's journey through France was more than just a physical journey. It was an intellectual one. Everywhere he went, he observed how the economy operated, how goods were produced, how people traded, and how the government influenced every aspect of life. He saw firsthand the challenges and the opportunities that different economic systems presented. And with every observation, his ideas became clearer, more refined, and more powerful. In France, Adam noticed that the economy was heavily controlled by the government. There were rules and regulations everywhere. Taxes on goods, restrictions on trade, and government monopolies that made it difficult for businesses to compete. These controls, Adam realized, were stifling the economy. Instead of encouraging growth and innovation, they were holding people back. Entrepreneurs were discouraged, and the economy was struggling. Adam began to think deeply about the reasons why some nations become wealthy while others remain poor. He believed that the key to economic growth was not more control, but less. He thought that if people were free to trade and compete without too much interference, the economy would grow, and everyone would benefit. This idea was revolutionary. At a time when most governments believed that they needed to control the economy to protect their interests, Adam was suggesting the opposite, that governments should step back and allow the market to operate freely. He believed that the invisible hand of the market, driven by individuals pursuing their own self-interest, would naturally guide the economy toward prosperity. As Adam continued his travels, his ideas started to take shape on the page. He began to write down his thoughts, crafting the arguments that would become the foundation of the Wealth of Nations. He wrote about the division of labor, explaining how specialization allowed workers to become more efficient and productive. He wrote about free trade, arguing that when countries traded freely with one another, they could all benefit. And he wrote about the role of government, suggesting that its primary role should be to protect property rights, enforce contracts, and maintain the rule of law, not to control the economy. But writing The Wealth of Nations was no easy task. Adam was tackling complex ideas, and he wanted to make sure that his arguments were clear and convincing. He spent hours, days, even weeks refining his thoughts, rewriting passages, and checking his facts. He wanted his book to be accessible to everyone, not just scholars and economists, but also merchants, politicians, and ordinary people. He knew that his ideas could make a real difference in the world, and he was determined to present them in a way that everyone could understand. One of the key concepts in The Wealth of Nations is the idea of the invisible hand. Adam believed that when individuals pursue their own self-interest, when they work to earn a living, to provide for their families, to succeed in business, they are often guided by an invisible hand that leads to outcomes that benefit society as a whole. For example, a baker who bakes bread to make a profit is also providing food for the community. Even though the baker is motivated by self-interest, the result is that the whole community benefits from the bread. This idea was both simple and profound. It suggested that people didn't need to be forced to act in the common good. By pursuing their own interests, they would naturally contribute to the well-being of others. This was a radical departure from the traditional view that governments needed to control and direct economic activity. As Adam wrote, he also considered the role of competition in the economy. He believed that competition was essential for innovation and growth. When businesses competed with one another, they were forced to find new ways to improve their products and lower their prices. This, in turn, benefited consumers, who could buy better goods at lower prices. Competition, Adam argued, was the engine that drove economic progress. But Adam also recognized that not all competition was fair. He knew that powerful businesses could sometimes use their influence to create monopolies or to secure special privileges from the government. These practices, he believed, were harmful to the economy because they stifled competition and led to higher prices and lower quality goods. Adam argued that governments should not create or support monopolies, but should instead ensure that markets remained open and competitive. As Adam continued to develop his ideas, he also thought about the importance of education and the role of the state in supporting it. He believed that for a free market to work effectively, people needed to be educated and informed. Education, Adam argued, was essential for people to make good decisions, both as consumers and as citizens. He suggested that the state had a role to play in ensuring that everyone had access to basic education so that they could participate fully in the economy and in society. The more Adam wrote, the more he realized the importance of his work. He was not just writing a book. He was creating a blueprint for how economies could grow, how wealth could be created, and how societies could prosper. He believed that if people understood these principles, they could build a better world, one where everyone had the opportunity to succeed. Finally, after years of writing and refining, The Wealth of Nations was ready. It was a massive work, filled with ideas that were both groundbreaking and practical. Adam knew that his book would challenge the conventional wisdom of the time, but he also believed that it offered a new way of thinking about economics that could benefit everyone. When The Wealth of Nations was published in 1776, it quickly became one of the most influential books of its time. People all over Europe read it, and they were amazed by Adam's insights. His ideas about free markets, competition, and the role of government resonated with many, and they began to change the way people thought about economics. The impact of The Wealth of Nations was profound. It laid the foundation for modern economics and influenced the development of economic policies in countries around the world. Adam's ideas about free trade and competition became central to the economic thinking of the 19th and 20th centuries, and they continue to shape our understanding of economics today. But The Wealth of Nations was more than just a book about economics. It was a book about how people could create a better world by working together, by trading freely, and by respecting each other's rights. It was a book that celebrated the potential of human ingenuity and the power of cooperation. As Adam Smith looked back on his work, he knew that he had created something truly remarkable. His journey from the quiet town of Kirkcaldy to the great cities of Europe had led him to a deep understanding of how economies worked and how they could be improved. And through the wealth of nations, he shared that understanding with the world, leaving a legacy that would endure for centuries to come. Chapter 8. The Invisible Hand. One of the most powerful and enduring ideas to emerge from Adam Smith's work is the concept of the invisible hand. This idea, though simple in its essence, has had a profound impact on how we understand economics and how societies organize themselves. But what exactly is this invisible hand, and why is it so important? Imagine a bustling marketplace, stalls lined with fresh fruits, vegetables, and bread. The aroma of freshly baked goods fills the air as people move from one vendor to another, buying what they need for their families. Among these vendors is a baker, a man who rises early each morning to knead dough and bake bread. The baker works hard, not just because he enjoys baking, but because he wants to earn a living. He needs to support his family, pay his bills, and maybe even save a little money for the future. Now, think about the people who come to buy the baker's bread. They aren't concerned with the baker's personal goals, they just want good, fresh bread to feed their families. They're willing to pay a fair price for it, and so they hand over their money in exchange for the bread. The baker, in turn, earns his living from these sales. He's happy because he's made a profit, and the customers are happy because they have fresh bread. But here's the remarkable thing. In this simple transaction, something bigger is happening. The baker is working for his own benefit, trying to make money. The customers are also acting in their own interest, seeking to buy the best bread they can find. Yet, without anyone planning it, the whole community benefits. The baker provides a valuable service, the customers get what they need, and the market thrives. This is the invisible hand at work. Adam Smith believed that this invisible hand was a natural force in the economy. When people act in their own self-interest, when they work to earn a living, to create products, or to offer services, they unintentionally contribute to the overall good of society. Even though each person is focused on their own goals, the invisible hand guides these actions in a way that benefits everyone. This idea was revolutionary. At a time when many believed that governments needed to control every aspect of the economy, Adam suggested that the best results often came from allowing people to make their own decisions. He argued that if people were free to pursue their own interests within a framework of laws that protected rights and property, society as a whole would prosper. Let's go back to the baker for a moment. If the government were to step in and set the price of bread, or dictate how much bread the baker could make, the market might not work as efficiently. The baker might not have the incentive to produce the best bread, or he might be forced to sell it at a price that doesn't cover his costs. Customers might find it harder to get the bread they want, or they might have to pay more than necessary. The invisible hand would be tied, unable to do its work. Adam Smith argued that this kind of government interference could do more harm than good. He believed that markets worked best when they were left to operate freely, with minimal interference. Of course, Adam wasn't saying that governments should do nothing. He recognized that there were important roles for the government to play, such as enforcing contracts, protecting property rights, and maintaining the rule of law. But beyond that, he believed that the invisible hand could guide the economy toward prosperity better than any government plan ever could. This idea of the invisible hand has become one of the most famous concepts in economics. It's a powerful metaphor for how markets work and how individual actions can lead to collective benefits. But it's also a reminder of the importance of freedom. Freedom for people to make their own choices, to pursue their own dreams, and to contribute to society in their own way. Adam saw the invisible hand as a force for good, one that could lead to innovation, growth, and prosperity. He believed that when people were free to compete, they would constantly seek to improve their products and services, driving progress and benefiting everyone. Competition, in this sense, was like fuel for the invisible hand, pushing it to create better outcomes for all. But Adam was also aware of the potential dangers. He knew that not all competition was fair, and that some businesses might try to cheat or manipulate the system to their advantage. This is why he believed that the government's role was not to control the market, but to ensure that the rules were fair, that competition was open, and that everyone had the opportunity to succeed. One of the most striking examples of the invisible hand at work can be seen in the way markets respond to changes in supply and demand. When there's a high demand for a product, prices tend to rise. This higher price signals to producers that there's an opportunity to make more money by producing more of that product. As more producers enter the market, supply increases and prices eventually come down, benefiting consumers. No one has to dictate these changes. They happen naturally, guided by the invisible hand. Adam's concept of the invisible hand was a radical departure from the traditional views of his time. It challenged the idea that economies needed to be tightly controlled by governments and offered a new vision of how markets could function more efficiently when left to their own devices. This idea didn't just stay in the realm of theory, it had real-world impacts. Over time, Adam's ideas influenced the way governments and policymakers thought about economics. The belief in free markets, competition, and limited government intervention became the foundation of modern economic thought. It influenced the development of capitalism, the rise of global trade, and the economic policies of many nations. But beyond its impact on policy, the invisible hand also offers a hopeful vision of human nature. It suggests that by pursuing our own goals, by working hard, by being innovative, by seeking to improve our lives, we can also contribute to the greater good. It's a reminder that our individual efforts, when guided by principles of fairness and justice, can help build a better society for everyone. As Adam Smith developed his ideas, he knew that the concept of the invisible hand was one of his most important contributions. It was a simple yet profound way of explaining how economies work, how wealth is created, and how societies can prosper. And it was a concept that would resonate far beyond his time, shaping the future of economics and helping to build the world we live in today. So, as we think about the marketplace, with its busy stalls and hard-working bakers, we can remember the invisible hand, a force that, without anyone noticing, helps guide our economies, our societies, and our lives toward prosperity. And we can thank Adam Smith for giving us the insight to see it, even when it's invisible. Chapter 9. The writing continues. After returning from his grand adventure through Europe, Adam Smith settled back in Scotland with a mission that would consume his days and nights, filling his thoughts with the complex ideas that he had gathered during his travels. He knew that what he was working on was something extraordinary, something that could change the way people understood the world. It was the wealth of nations. Adam was now in his hometown of Kirkcaldy, a small, quiet place on the east coast of Scotland. The tranquility of the town provided the perfect environment for Adam to focus on his writing. He had a clear goal: to explain how economies work, how prices are set, and how trade between countries could make everyone richer. These were big, complicated ideas, but Adam had a rare gift: the ability to make even the most complex concepts easy to understand. Each day, Adam would sit at his desk, his quill pen in hand, and write. The words flowed from his mind onto the paper, each page bringing him closer to completing his monumental work. He would often write late into the night, the only light coming from the candle flickering beside him. His mind was full of ideas, turning over the same questions again and again. What makes economies grow? Why do some nations become rich while others remain poor? How can trade create wealth for all? As Adam wrote, he thought about the many people he had met during his travels, the philosophers in France, the political thinkers in Switzerland, and the merchants in Italy. Their ideas, their experiences, and their challenges all played a part in shaping his understanding of economics. He realized that economies were not just about money, they were about people, how they work, how they trade, how they live their lives. One of the key ideas that Adam wanted to explain in The Wealth of Nations was how markets worked. He believed that markets were like living organisms, constantly changing, adapting, and growing. Prices, he realized, were set not by any one person, but by the collective actions of all the buyers and sellers in the market. When there was a high demand for a product, prices would rise. When there was a surplus, prices would fall. It was a natural process, guided by what he called the invisible hand. Adam knew that these were not just theoretical ideas, they had real-world implications. He believed that if people understood how markets worked, they could make better decisions, both as consumers and as citizens. They could support policies that promoted free trade, competition, and innovation, policies that would lead to greater prosperity for everyone. But explaining these ideas was no easy task. Adam wanted to be sure that his book was accessible to all kinds of readers, not just scholars and economists, but also merchants, politicians, and ordinary people. He worked tirelessly to find the right words, the right examples, the right arguments to make his ideas clear and compelling. Friends would often visit Adam, curious to see how his work was progressing. They would find him surrounded by books and papers, his desk piled high with drafts and notes. Adam would greet them warmly, but his mind was always half focused on his writing, always thinking about the next chapter, the next argument, the next insight. His friends were amazed at his dedication, at how he seemed to live and breathe his work. They knew that Adam was working on something important, something that could change the world. Despite the long hours and the intense concentration, Adam never lost his passion for his work. He was driven by a deep belief in the importance of what he was doing. He knew that The Wealth of Nations could have a profound impact on the way people thought about economics, trade, and society. He believed that his book could help create a better world, a world where people were free to trade, to innovate, to improve their lives. But Adam was also aware of the challenges he faced. He knew that his ideas would be controversial, that they would challenge the established views of the time. Many people believed that governments needed to control the economy, to regulate trade, to set prices. Adam was arguing for something different, for a system where markets were free, where competition drove innovation, and where trade could benefit everyone. This was a radical idea, and Adam knew that it would take time for people to understand and accept it. But he was confident that if he could explain his ideas clearly, if he could show the evidence and make the arguments, then people would see the wisdom in what he was saying. As the months passed, the chapters of The Wealth of Nations began to take shape. Adam wrote about the division of labor, explaining how specialization made workers more efficient and productive. He wrote about the importance of free trade, showing how it allowed countries to benefit from each other's strengths. He wrote about the role of government, arguing that its primary function should be to protect property rights, enforce contracts, and maintain the rule of law, not to control the economy. But even as Adam worked tirelessly on his book, he knew that there was still much more to do. He was constantly revising, refining, and rethinking his arguments. He wanted to be sure that every word, every sentence, every paragraph was perfect. He knew that his book would be read by people all over the world, and he wanted it to stand the test of time. Finally, after years of hard work, Adam began to see the end in sight. The chapters were coming together, the arguments were clear, and the ideas were fully developed. He knew that he was close to finishing his masterpiece, a book that would change the course of economics, that would influence generations of thinkers and policymakers, that would help shape the modern world. As Adam wrote the final pages of The Wealth of Nations, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He knew that he had poured everything he had into this book, his knowledge, his experiences, his insights, his passion. He believed that his work could make a difference, that it could help people understand the world in a new way. And so, with a final stroke of his pen, Adam completed The Wealth of Nations. He knew that his journey was not over, that there would be debates, discussions, and disagreements about his ideas. But he was ready for that. He was ready to share his vision with the world, to offer a new way of thinking about economics, trade, and society. Adam Smith had created something truly remarkable, a book that would stand as a cornerstone of modern economic thought, a book that would inspire and challenge generations to come. And as he looked back on the long hours, the late nights, the endless revisions, he knew that it had all been worth it. He had written a book that could change the world, and he was ready to let it do just that. Chapter 10. The Wealth of Nations is published. The year was 1776, a year that would go down in history, not just for the birth of a nation across the Atlantic, but for the birth of a new way of thinking about economies, trade, and society. After years of relentless effort, Adam Smith's masterpiece, The Wealth of Nations, was finally published. The moment had arrived, and the world would never be the same. When the first copies of The Wealth of Nations appeared in bookstores, they quickly caught the attention of scholars, politicians, and merchants across Europe. The book was an instant sensation. People were captivated by Adam's fresh and powerful ideas. They were eager to understand this new vision of how wealth was created, how markets worked, and how nations could prosper. As readers turned the pages, they discovered a world where free markets, rather than government control, could lead to incredible growth and innovation. Adam's book didn't just present a theory, it told a story about how societies could thrive when individuals were free to pursue their own interests, within a framework of fair rules and justice. He explained how, in a free market, competition could drive progress. When businesses competed to offer the best products and services, consumers benefited from better choices, lower prices, and higher quality. This, Adam argued, was the engine of economic growth. But The Wealth of Nations was more than just a book about economics. It was a bold challenge to the old ways of thinking. For centuries, governments had believed that they needed to tightly control their economies, to set prices, restrict trade, and regulate industries. They thought this was the only way to ensure prosperity. But Adam's book turned that idea on its head. He argued that governments should not try to control the economy. Instead, their role should be to create the conditions in which free markets could flourish. They should protect property rights, enforce contracts, and maintain peace. Beyond that, they should let the invisible hand of the market guide the economy. Adam believed that when individuals were free to make their own decisions about what to produce, what to buy, and where to invest, they would naturally contribute to the wealth of the nation. These ideas were revolutionary. They went against the grain of what most people believed at the time. But Adam's arguments were clear, logical, and backed by evidence. He showed how, throughout history, nations that embraced free trade and open markets had prospered, while those that tried to control their economies had often struggled. One of the key concepts in The Wealth of Nations was the idea of self-interest. Adam believed that when people acted in their own self-interest, they didn't just benefit themselves, they also contributed to the greater good. He used a simple example. A baker doesn't bake bread just to feed others. He bakes it to earn a living. But by pursuing his own interest, the baker provides a service that benefits the entire community. This, Adam explained, was how the invisible hand worked. guiding people's actions in a way that led to positive outcomes for everyone. As word of Adam's book spread, it sparked debates and discussions across Europe. In salons and coffee houses, in universities and government halls, people talked about Adam's ideas. Some were excited by the possibilities of free markets. Others were skeptical, unsure if such ideas could really work in practice. But one thing was clear: the wealth of nations had changed the conversation. It had introduced a new way of thinking about economics that would influence the world for generations to come. In Britain, Adam's ideas began to influence policymakers. They started to rethink the role of government in the economy. Should the government really be setting prices and controlling trade? Or should it focus on creating a fair environment where businesses could compete freely? These questions would shape economic policy in Britain and beyond, leading to the gradual rise of free market capitalism. Across the Atlantic, in the newly independent United States, the wealth of nations was also making an impact. The founders of the United States, including figures like Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, were deeply influenced by Adam's ideas. They saw the potential for a nation built on the principles of free trade, competition, and limited government. The ideas in The Wealth of Nations would help to shape the economic policies of the United States, guiding its growth into one of the most prosperous nations in the world. But the influence of The Wealth of Nations didn't stop there. Over time, Adam's ideas spread across Europe and beyond. They inspired economists, thinkers, and policymakers in countries around the world. The book became a cornerstone of modern economic thought, laying the foundation for the study of economics as we know it today. What made The Wealth of Nations so powerful was not just its ideas, but the way Adam presented them. He had a gift for making complex concepts easy to understand. He used clear examples, like the baker, to illustrate how markets worked. He wrote in a way that was engaging and accessible, making his ideas available to a wide audience. This was one of the reasons why the book had such a lasting impact. People could not only understand Adam's ideas, but also see how they applied to their own lives. As Adam watched his book gain popularity, he must have felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had spent years developing these ideas, refining his arguments, and writing page after page. Now, his work was out in the world, influencing the way people thought about economics and society. He had achieved something truly remarkable. He had changed the way the world understood wealth. But Adam also knew that his work was not done. He continued to write, to teach, and to engage with the ideas that he had explored in The Wealth of Nations. He knew that the book was just the beginning, that the ideas it contained would continue to evolve as new challenges and opportunities emerged. In the years that followed, The Wealth of Nations became one of the most important books in history. It laid the groundwork for the development of modern capitalism, influencing the way economies were structured and how wealth was created. Adam's ideas about free markets, competition, and the role of government would continue to shape economic thought for centuries to come. As we look back on the publication of The Wealth of Nations, we can see just how much Adam Smith's ideas have influenced the world we live in today. His belief in the power of free markets, his understanding of the invisible hand, and his vision of a world where people were free to pursue their own interests. These ideas have become the foundation of modern economics. And it all started with a book. A book that captured the imagination of a world ready for change. Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations was more than just a book. It was a revolution in thought, a blueprint for prosperity, and a lasting legacy that continues to guide us today. As we turn the last page of this chapter, we can only imagine the impact it has had and will continue to have on the world we share. Chapter 11. The Impact of His Ideas. Adam Smith's ideas, captured in The Wealth of Nations, spread like wildfire. Almost as soon as the ink dried on the pages, politicians, businessmen, and scholars across Europe began to see the world in a new way. Adam's vision of free markets, competition, and the role of the invisible hand started to reshape how people thought about economics, trade, and society. For centuries, most people had believed that economies needed to be controlled by the government. Kings, queens, and their advisors thought they knew best when it came to setting prices, controlling trade, and deciding how resources should be used. But Adam's ideas challenged this old way of thinking, and many people found his arguments persuasive. As more people read The Wealth of Nations, they began to understand that free markets could lead to economic growth in ways they had never imagined. Adam explained that when individuals were free to pursue their own interests, when they were allowed to create, trade, and innovate without unnecessary government interference, society as a whole would benefit. This was a radical idea, but it was also incredibly powerful. One of the first places where Adam's ideas took hold was in Great Britain. Politicians who were looking for ways to improve the country's economy found inspiration in Adam's work. They began to see that by removing restrictions on trade and allowing businesses to compete freely, they could encourage innovation and create wealth. Over time, these ideas helped to shape the development of the British economy, leading to the Industrial Revolution, a period of rapid technological change and economic growth that transformed Britain into one of the most powerful nations in the world. But the impact of Adam's ideas didn't stop at Britain's shores. Across the Atlantic, in the newly independent United States, Adam's ideas were also making waves. The founders of the United States, including figures like Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, were deeply influenced by The Wealth of Nations. They saw the potential for a new kind of nation, one built on the principles of free trade, individual liberty, and limited government. The concept of the invisible hand became a cornerstone of modern economics. People started to believe that if individuals were free to pursue their own interests, the invisible hand would guide the economy toward greater prosperity. This idea supported the belief in limited government intervention, where the role of the state was to protect property rights, enforce contracts, and maintain order, but not to control the details of economic life. In the United States, these ideas helped to shape the country's economic policies from the very beginning. The belief in free markets and competition became part of the American identity, driving the country's growth and innovation. The United States embraced capitalism, a system where private individuals and businesses own and control property and trade goods and services in a free market. This system, influenced by Adam's ideas, played a crucial role in making the United States one of the wealthiest nations in the world. But the influence of the Wealth of Nations didn't end there. Adam's ideas spread across Europe and beyond. In France, Germany, and other countries, economists and politicians began to rethink their own economic policies. They saw the benefits of free trade and competition, and they started to adopt these ideas in their own countries. Over time, the principles of free markets and limited government intervention became the foundation of modern economic thought. Adam's impact wasn't just limited to the world of economics. His ideas also influenced political thought and the way societies were organized. The concept of individual liberty, the idea that people should be free to make their own choices and pursue their own goals, became a key part of the political philosophy of the Enlightenment, a movement that emphasized reason, science, and the rights of individuals. Adam's work contributed to this movement, helping to lay the groundwork for modern democracy and the belief in human rights. One of the reasons Adam's ideas were so influential was because they offered a new way of understanding how economies worked. Before The Wealth of Nations, many people believed that wealth was something that could be accumulated by hoarding gold and silver. But Adam showed that wealth wasn't just about money. It was about the ability to produce goods and services that people needed and wanted. He explained that by increasing production and trade, nations could become wealthier, and their people could enjoy a higher standard of living. Adam also helped people see the importance of competition. He argued that when businesses competed with each other, they were forced to innovate, to find better ways of doing things, and to offer better products at lower prices. This competition benefited consumers, who had more choices and could buy higher quality goods at lower costs. It also encouraged economic growth, as businesses invested in new technologies and processes to stay ahead of their competitors. Over time, Adam's ideas about free markets, competition, and the invisible hand became the foundation of modern economics. These concepts were taught in universities, discussed in government offices, and debated in public forums. They influenced the development of economic policies in countries around the world, helping to shape the global economy as we know it today. But perhaps the most important impact of Adam's work was the way it changed how people thought about their own lives. Adam believed that individuals, when left free to pursue their own interests, could contribute to the greater good of society. This idea gave people a sense of empowerment. It showed them that their actions, their decisions, and their work could make a difference, not just for themselves, but for their communities and their countries. Even today, more than 2 centuries after The Wealth of Nations was published, Adam Smith's ideas remain relevant. The principles of free markets, competition, and limited government intervention continue to guide economic policy in many countries. Economists and policymakers still look to Adam's work for insights into how to create wealth, how to promote economic growth, and how to ensure that the benefits of prosperity are shared widely. Adam Smith's legacy is not just in the ideas he developed, but in the way those ideas have shaped the world we live in today. His vision of a world where individuals are free to pursue their own goals, where markets operate freely and fairly, and where competition drives innovation and growth, continues to inspire and challenge us. As we look around the world today, we can see the impact of Adam's ideas everywhere, from the bustling markets of cities around the globe to the policies that guide our governments. His work has helped to create a world where people have more opportunities, where economies are more dynamic, and where societies are more prosperous. Chapter 12. The Legacy of Adam Smith. In the quiet year of 1790, Adam Smith passed away. But the ideas he left behind were anything but quiet. They were loud, powerful, and destined to echo through the centuries. Though Adam himself was gone, his thoughts, his words, and his vision of how the world could work continued to live on. Today, Adam Smith is remembered as the father of modern economics, a title that he earned through his groundbreaking work, The Wealth of Nations. But what made Adam Smith's ideas so enduring? Why do we still talk about him today, more than 230 years after his death? To answer that, we need to go back to the essence of what Adam believed in: ideas and freedom. Adam Smith was a man who believed deeply in the power of ideas. He understood that ideas have the ability to change the world, to reshape societies, and to inspire people to think differently. He spent his life exploring big questions about how wealth is created, how people trade, and how societies organize themselves. He wasn't just interested in abstract theories. He wanted to understand how the world worked so that he could help make it better. One of the most important ideas that Adam Smith championed was the idea of freedom, specifically economic freedom. He believed that when people are free to trade, innovate, and compete, everyone benefits. This was a radical idea in Adam's time, when many people believed that the government needed to control the economy to ensure prosperity. But Adam saw things differently. He believed that individuals, acting in their own self-interest, could create wealth not just for themselves, but for society as a whole. This idea of economic freedom was at the heart of the Wealth of Nations. Adam argued that when people are free to make their own choices about what to produce, what to buy, and what to sell, they create a dynamic, thriving economy. He showed that competition drives innovation, that trade allows countries to benefit from each other's strengths, and that markets work best when they are open and free. These ideas were revolutionary. and they had a profound impact on the world. Over time, they helped to shape the development of modern capitalism, the system of free markets and competition that drives much of the world's economy today. Adam's ideas influenced the economic policies of nations around the globe, from Britain to the United States to countries in Europe and beyond. His work laid the foundation for the global economy that we live in today. But Adam's legacy isn't just about economics. It's also about how we think about society and human nature. Adam believed that people are naturally inclined to help one another, that we are motivated not just by self-interest, but also by a sense of sympathy and moral concern for others. This belief in the goodness of human nature was central to his first major work, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, and it informed his later work on economics as well. In The Wealth of Nations, Adam showed how this natural inclination to care for others can coexist with self-interest in a way that benefits everyone. He argued that when people pursue their own goals, whether it's a baker selling bread or a merchant trading goods, they often end up helping others without even realizing it. This idea, known as the invisible hand, became one of the most famous concepts in economics. The invisible hand is a powerful metaphor that captures the essence of Adam's vision. It suggests that even in a world where everyone is focused on their own success, there is a natural tendency for these individual actions to lead to positive outcomes for society as a whole. This idea has inspired countless economists, politicians, and thinkers over the years, and it continues to shape the way we think about economics today. Adam Smith's legacy is also reflected in the way we teach and learn about economics. His books, The Wealth of Nations and The Theory of Moral Sentiments, are still studied in universities around the world. Students read his work to understand the foundations of economic theory and to explore the ideas that have shaped our modern world. Adam's clear, logical writing and his ability to explain complex ideas in simple terms make his work accessible to readers of all levels. But Adam's influence goes beyond the classroom. His ideas have become a part of the fabric of our societies. When we talk about free markets, competition, or the role of government in the economy, we are drawing on concepts that Adam Smith first articulated more than 2 centuries ago. His vision of a world where people are free to trade, innovate, and compete continues to inspire debates about how to create prosperity and how to build a just and fair society. Today, we see Adam Smith's legacy all around us, in the markets where we shop, in the businesses we build, and in the economies that continue to grow. His ideas about free trade and competition have helped to create a world where people have more opportunities than ever before. They have driven technological advancements, opened up new markets, and allowed billions of people to improve their lives through hard work and innovation. But perhaps the most important part of Adam Smith's legacy is the belief that ideas can change the world. Adam was a quiet boy from a small town in Scotland, but his ideas were big, bold, and powerful. He showed us that by thinking deeply, questioning the status quo, and exploring new ways of understanding the world, we can make a difference. His life is a testament to the power of thought and the importance of intellectual freedom. And so, the story of Adam Smith comes to an end, but his legacy lives on. It lives on in the ideas that continue to shape our world, in the markets that drive our economies, and in the belief that freedom, economic and intellectual, is the key to human progress. Adam Smith's ideas have stood the test of time, and they will continue to inspire and guide us as we navigate the challenges of the future. As we close this chapter, we can reflect on the remarkable journey of Adam Smith, a journey that began in a small Scottish town and led to the creation of ideas that changed the world. His life reminds us that even the most humble beginnings can lead to extraordinary achievements, and that the power of ideas can indeed shape the course of history. Adam Smith's legacy is not just a part of the past. It is a living, breathing force that continues to influence our lives today, and will do so for generations to come.